David Bennett had always held the conviction that diligence was met with life's rewards. Raised in a modest Brooklyn apartment by a single mother facing financial challenges, he experienced the harsh realities of life up close. His mother juggled 2 jobs to ensure there was food on the table, and David quickly realized that to alter his situation, he would need to outwork everyone around him. And he certainly did. By the time he reached high school, he was already delving into various methods to earn money online. He began with modest endeavors, crafting websites and overseeing social media accounts, and before long, he had established a digital marketing firm from the ground up. What began as a small venture in his college dorm at New York University rapidly transformed into a multimillion-dollar enterprise by the age of 30. With achievement arrived opulence. David resided in a luxurious penthouse high above Manhattan, cruised around in a sleek Tesla Model S, and savored meals at the city's most prestigious dining establishments. Yet, in spite of all his riches, he never allowed it to cloud his judgment. He was recognized for his kindness, contributing to charitable causes, supporting aspiring business owners, and consistently looking after his mother. However, even with all the wealth at his disposal, there remained one desire that eclipsed all others: a household. And that's when Emily Watson entered the scene. She possessed a captivating beauty, a sharp intellect, and embodied all that David had ever envisioned in a partner. 2 years prior, they crossed paths at a charity event in Central Park, where Emily was serving as the event coordinator. Her lack of interest in his riches piqued his curiosity. She radiated warmth and kindness, driven by a deep passion for assisting others. In contrast to the women he had previously dated, she showed no interest in high-end handbags or extravagant getaways. She was passionate about creating a positive impact in the world. As time passed, their relationship flourished. David was certain that Emily was the one. She brought joy to his life, encouraged his aspirations, and always saw him as simply David, not as a wealthy man. They journeyed side by side, confiding their deepest fears and aspirations, forging what he thought was an indestructible connection. At the age of 32, David felt prepared to embark on his next journey. 6 months prior, he had asked Emily to marry him on a secluded beach in Hawaii, beneath a canopy of stars. In that instant, joy enveloped him as her words of affirmation echoed in his heart. They had been meticulously crafting the details of the wedding ever since, and with just 4 weeks remaining, everything appeared to be in flawless harmony. Yet, a persistent thought had been troubling David recently. Emily's behavior had taken a peculiar turn in recent weeks. She began to cancel dinner plans, overlook his calls, and always appeared preoccupied when they were in each other's company. When he inquired about it, she dismissed it, attributing it to the pressures of wedding planning. David yearned to trust her, yet beneath the surface, an unsettling feeling lingered. The breaking point arrived when she unexpectedly called off their long-anticipated weekend escape to the Hamptons, a journey they had eagerly awaited for months. She asserted that a family emergency had arisen, necessitating her presence with her cousin in New Jersey. David felt the urge to inquire further but ultimately chose to hold back. He believed in her, or at least he convinced himself he did. On that Sunday, David made his way to Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan to see his best friend, Mark Roberts. Mark found himself in a minor car accident and was on the mend from a leg injury. David arrived with coffee, shared some lighthearted jokes to uplift his spirits, and dedicated a couple of hours to reconnecting. Just as he was about to depart, he mistakenly veered down the hospital corridor and found himself near the maternity ward. In that moment, he witnessed something that shattered his entire reality. Through the expansive glass window of the newborn nursery, he caught sight of Emily. She stood within the room, cradling a newborn in her embrace. Initially, he believed it was merely a figment of his imagination. Perhaps it was another individual who merely resembled her. As he stepped closer, certainty washed over him. It was indeed Emily. She cradled the baby with tender movements, her lips forming soft words as a radiant expression of affection illuminated her features. David sensed his heart pounding in his chest. A knot formed in his stomach as a chilling wave of confusion enveloped him. What brought Emily here? Whose little one was that? He was torn between the urge to confront her and the desire to simply walk away. Yet, just as he was about to make a choice, a sight struck him to his core. Emily pressed her lips gently to the baby's forehead. This kiss was unlike any other. It was the sort of kiss that a mother bestows upon her child. David felt a sudden tightness in his throat. A multitude of questions swirled in his thoughts, yet only one held significance. Was Emily concealing a hidden child from him? Before moving on to the next segment, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David lingered outside the maternity ward, a whirlwind of thoughts swirling in his mind, his heart thundering in his chest, echoing in his ears. Emily was inside, blissfully oblivious to his presence, cradling the baby as if it were the most instinctive act imaginable. The way she looked at the infant, the way she held the tiny body with such care, it transcended mere affection. It was an essence that ran deeper, an undeniable truth. David experienced a sudden sinking feeling in his stomach. Every assumption he had formed about their relationship, every moment they had experienced together, suddenly seemed like a meticulously constructed facade. His initial impulse was to burst into the room and seek out the truth. Yet, an invisible force restrained him. Perhaps it was trepidation, a dread of her potential words, a hesitation to validate the unimaginable. Instead, he stepped back, fists clenched, and pivoted on his heel. As he stepped out of the hospital, his mind was a whirlpool, leaving him only vaguely conscious of the world around him. The streets of Manhattan thrummed with life, yet everything surrounding him seemed far away, subdued. He slid into his car, his hands clutching the steering wheel with such intensity that his knuckles blanched. Who was that little one? Did it belong to her? If that were the case, why had she never confided in him? Was she pregnant prior to their meeting? Had she been deceiving him for the past 2 years? Or even more troubling, had she been unfaithful to him? His thoughts churned with a multitude of options, each more agonizing than the one before. He attempted to engage in a dialogue with his own thoughts. Perhaps there exists a rational justification. Perhaps the infant truly belonged to a relative, and Emily was merely lending a hand. Yet, beneath the surface, he was aware of the truth of his vision. That wasn't how one gazed upon a family member's offspring. That was the look of a mother, filled with deep affection. He navigated the roads without purpose for an hour, his mind a whirlwind of disarray. At last, he came to a stop outside his apartment and retrieved his phone. He paused briefly, his thumb lingering above Emily's name. Addressing her through the phone felt off. He had to meet her face to face, to gaze into her eyes as she offered him an explanation, if she had one to give. As the evening unfolded, Emily arrived just as we had arranged. She entered with a smile as though all was well, placing her purse on the kitchen counter. "Hey babe," she said, leaning in for a kiss, but David pulled away. His expression was a mystery, yet his posture betrayed a palpable tension. Her brow furrowed, an instinctive awareness of something amiss creeping in. "What's happening?" David folded his arms, his tone quiet yet resolute. "Today I caught a glimpse of you." Emily blinked, a look of bewilderment crossing her features. "Could you clarify what you mean?" At the hospital, he observed her reaction intently. "I spotted you in the maternity ward, cradling an infant." For a brief instant, she remained still. Her eyes flickered with surprise for a moment, and then, as if finding her composure, she released a soft, nervous chuckle. "Oh," she remarked with a casual air, "that was the baby of my cousin. I mentioned there was a family emergency." David was skeptical of her claims. He had devoted years to the art of business negotiations, keenly observing body language and detecting unspoken lies before they even surfaced. At that moment, Emily was not being truthful. He noticed it in her averted gaze, in the feigned nonchalance of her voice. "Honestly," he remarked with a measured tone, "as it appeared from my vantage point that you weren't merely here for a visit." Emily took a deep breath. "David, you're complicating things too much. Could it be that I am?" His voice had taken on a more cutting edge. "From my vantage point, It appeared as though you were cradling your own offspring. The room was enveloped in silence. For the first time, Emily found herself at a loss for words. Her complexion drained of color, and she parted her lips as if to utter something, yet silence enveloped her. David moved in a bit nearer. "Reveal the truth to me, Emily. Is that your little one?" Her eyes flitted about, searching for a way out. I can't do this right now," she whispered, shaking her head. David felt a heavy weight in his chest. That was not a rejection. That was not an explanation. That was a revelation. He let out a sharp breath, running his fingers through his hair. Indeed, he whispered to himself, "You've deceived me all along." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. "David, I urge you to hear me out. What should I be listening to?" His voice elevated. "To additional falsehoods? To additional justifications? You had a child and never mentioned it to me? We're set to tie the knot in just 4 weeks. Emily, what's the best way to conceal something like this?" She wept, her cheeks glistening with tears. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. I was unsure of how to proceed." David emitted a sardonic chuckle. "Were you unaware of how to do it?" His chest throbbed with a mix of fury and treachery. "What do you think about saying, 'Hey David, I have a child'?" He shook his head, a look of incredulity washing over his face. "When were you planning to share this with me, Emily? On the day of our union, or perhaps not at all?" She dried her eyes, her breath unsteady. She confessed that fear had gripped her. "I believed that if you were aware, you might choose not to stay by my side." David's jaw clenched. "So you chose deception over honesty? So, you think it was better to let me fall for a version of you that didn't even exist?" Emily trembled slightly, her shoulders quivering with unspoken emotion. "My intention was never to cause you pain. But you did," David murmured, his voice softer now yet still filled with anguish. "You lacked the confidence to share the truth with me." He averted his gaze, brushing his fingers across his face. Everything seemed otherworldly, as if trapped in a haunting dream from which he could not escape. She advanced with a touch of uncertainty. "David, my affection for you knows no bounds. I kindly ask for a moment to clarify my thoughts." He gazed at her, and for the very first time in their whole relationship, uncertainty clouded his belief in her words. Love was founded on trust, and at this moment that trust lay in ruins. Before moving on to the next part, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David gazed at Emily, his thoughts swirling with disbelief, anger, and confusion. The woman he had confided in above all others, the one he envisioned sharing his future with, had been harboring a secret that would change everything. A young one. This is a secret unlike any other. She had concealed an entire human existence from him. His stomach churned as he struggled to comprehend it. He felt an overwhelming urge to shout for clarity, wishing he could turn back the clock and undo the events of the last few hours. Emily stood before him, her cheeks glistening with tears, her hands quivering as she reached out. Yet he recoiled, reluctant to find solace in the one who had just broken his trust. "David, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never intended to hide this from you. Fear gripped me. I feared I might lose you." His jaw tightened, fists balling at his sides. Filled with fear, he uttered the words again, his voice a mere whisper yet charged with deep emotion. "So, you were afraid and chose to deceive me for 2 years? Can you imagine the feeling of witnessing you cradling a baby today? To come to the shocking realization that the woman I was about to marry had been hiding something like this from me?" His voice escalated, the irritation spilling forth. "Who is the father, Emily?" Emily inhaled deeply, her breath trembling as she averted her gaze for a brief moment before locking eyes with him once more. Finally, she revealed his name, Ryan. "We had a connection even before our paths crossed. I discovered I was expecting after our relationship had ended." David experienced a sudden void, as if the very ground he stood on had vanished into thin air. Ryan. An unfamiliar name echoed in his mind. A figure from Emily's past, who had departed yet left behind a fragment of himself that she had opted to conceal. His heart raced as he fought to assemble all the fragments into a coherent whole. "And where is he now?" he demanded, his voice steely. Emily paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. He has gone," she confessed. Upon sharing the news of the baby, he expressed that he felt unprepared. He relocated to a different state and never glanced back. Her voice carried a weight of sorrow, yet David found it difficult to concentrate on that aspect. He was utterly engulfed by his own feelings. "So you've chosen to pretend that none of this ever took place?" he inquired, shaking his head in disbelief. "Emily, we shared our thoughts on everything. Our future, our dreams, and even the possibility of having kids one day. All that time you had a child, and it never crossed your mind that I should be aware of it." She reached for his hands once more, tears cascading down her cheeks. "She was adamant about sharing her thoughts with you. Promise. I simply found myself uncertain about the timing and the method. As we became engaged, the anticipation grew, and with each passing day leading up to the wedding, the challenges seemed to multiply. I was filled with dread at the thought of you abandoning me." David released a sardonic chuckle, withdrawing his hands. "Isn't it interesting? I cared for you deeply, to the point where it would have made no difference. If you had shared your thoughts from the start, I would have been open to listening and making an effort to comprehend. But now all I can perceive is that you lacked faith in me. You didn't believe I deserved the truth." His voice faltered at the end, the burden of the betrayal heavy upon him. Emily wept bitterly. "I have faith in you, David. My affection for you knows no bounds. Kindly don't turn your back on us." David let out a breath, his thoughts swirling in a tempest of feelings. He dedicated years to crafting a life rooted in integrity, diligence, and faith in others. In just a matter of hours, the foundation of everything he believed about his relationship had crumbled away. Was it possible for him to transcend this moment? Could he still commit to Emily, aware that she had concealed something so significant from him? The sorrow in her gaze revealed her deep regret. Yet, was remorse truly sufficient? He averted his gaze, his hands moving to his face in a weary gesture. "I need time," he said at last, his voice quiet and stripped of its previous fury. "I can't simply act as if everything is okay." He glanced over his shoulder at her, his gaze heavy with pain. "I must determine whether I can place my trust in you once more." Emily released a quiet, fractured sob yet managed to nod in response. "I comprehend," she murmured. "Feel free to take as much time as you require. Just please don't exclude me entirely." David remained silent. He snatched his jacket, yearning to escape the confines of the apartment, craving the freedom to breathe. As he emerged into the brisk Manhattan air, the chill struck his face, yet it failed to quell the tempest swirling within him. He wandered without purpose, moving past the shimmering lights of the city that had once embraced him, now transformed into a realm of unsettling unfamiliarity. He reflected on the last 2 years, each moment shared with Emily, every vow exchanged between them. Was it all truly genuine, or was it constructed upon a base of falsehoods? He wished to convince himself that her actions stemmed from fear, a mere error born of trepidation rather than any ill intent. Yet, the harm had already been inflicted. Now he faced the choice of whether their love could endure this challenge. Before moving on to the next part, please consider subscribing to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David wandered the bustling streets of Manhattan for hours, his thoughts circling back to each moment shared with Emily. He recalled every conversation, her smiles, the declarations of love that had filled him with hope, making him feel as though they were destined for a future grounded in trust. And yet, the truth had lingered just beneath the surface, much like a hidden crack in a house's foundation, unnoticed until the moment it became too late to address. With each step he took, the ache in his chest grew more intense. He had always viewed himself as a person of reason, someone capable of dissecting a scenario and arriving at sound conclusions. Yet, there was an unmistakable lack of reason in it all. It was a profound sense of betrayal, a deep wound that seemed so severe that he doubted it could ever truly mend. He paused at a quaint diner close to Central Park, a spot he frequented before Emily entered his life, during a time when everything felt uncomplicated, unburdened by the turmoil that now enveloped him. He perched at the counter, requested a black coffee, and gazed at his reflection in the window, struggling to identify the man staring back at him. His phone vibrated on the counter, and for a fleeting instant, he considered letting it go unanswered. But upon seeing Emily's name, a weight settled in his chest. He paused before responding, his tone deep and weighty. "Greetings? Is that you, David?" Her voice floated softly, barely breaking the silence, and he could sense the traces of tears that had marked her cheeks. I wanted to see how you're doing. I understand you require some space, yet my thoughts keep drifting back to you. Who we are." David let out a deep breath, massaging his temple. "Emily, I'm at a loss for words in this moment. You deceived me. It's not merely a trivial matter. It's about something that transforms everything." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "I feel a deep sense of disappointment in myself for it. I ought to have shared this with you right from the start. Trust me when I say that my intentions were never to cause you pain." Fear gripped me. I felt a deep sense of regret about my past and the way things unfolded with Ryan. And then I encountered you, and you gave me the sense that I had a new opportunity. I never wanted to let you go. David gritted his teeth, his grip on the coffee cup growing firmer. "Yet you didn't even allow me the opportunity to choose, Emily. You made the choice on my behalf. You believed that concealing the reality was preferable to confronting it side by side. That's the deepest pain." The stillness enveloped the distance that separated them. Then she softly murmured, "I love you, David. I understand that I may not have earned your forgiveness at this moment, but it's important for you to hear this from me. You are the most incredible thing that has ever entered my life." David shut his eyes, a tempest of feelings churning within him. Love was not a fleeting emotion that vanished in an instant. He still held deep feelings for her. Yet affection alone couldn't sustain their bond in the absence of trust. "I require time," he reiterated, his tone steady yet gentler on this occasion. "I require some time to reflect." Emily let out a soft sniffle. "All right, I see what you mean. Just please don't exclude me entirely." There was no reply from him. He concluded the conversation and remained seated, gazing at his unblemished coffee, contemplating whether love could genuinely endure such a trial. The subsequent days unfolded in a haze. David immersed himself in his tasks, seeking solace in the busyness of his day. Yet, despite the countless meetings he participated in and the deals he struck, Emily remained a constant presence, haunting the recesses of his thoughts. He pondered the infant, contemplating the implications of his decision to remain with her. Could he embrace the role of a father figure for a child who wasn't his own? Could he find it in his heart to forgive her for concealing something so significant from him? One evening, as he found himself alone in his apartment, his thoughts began to spiral once more. He sought clarity, not merely from Emily, but from an individual who had been present since the very start. Without a moment's hesitation, he snatched his car keys and sped off to an address he had uncovered in a swift search. Upon reaching the quaint house in Brooklyn, he felt his heart race as he rapped on the door. A moment later, a woman in her late 50s responded, her expression marked by astonishment. "How may I assist you?" she inquired, her gaze fixed on him with intrigue. "Are you the mother of Emily?" he inquired, his tone unwavering even amidst the turmoil within him. After a moment of uncertainty, she gave a slight nod. "Indeed. So you must be David." He let out a breath. "I would like to have a conversation with you. Concerning Emily. Concerning the infant." Her expression became gentle, reflecting a deep sense of understanding. She moved to the side, inviting him to enter with a graceful gesture. He trailed behind her into a snug living room, where the walls were adorned with framed photographs of Emily from her childhood. They settled into their seats, and for a brief moment, an enveloping silence lingered between them. Then Emily's mother let out a deep sigh. "I take it Emily has finally shared the news with you." David nodded, his jaw clenched. Indeed, she did. However, I must grasp the reasoning behind it. What made her hold onto it for such an extended period? She cast her gaze downward, her hands neatly folded in her lap. Emily faced numerous challenges upon discovering her pregnancy. Ryan left her entirely. She felt utterly shattered. Upon the arrival of her baby, she faced significant challenges, both emotionally and financially. She felt an overwhelming fear of judgment, terrified of being perceived as a failure. It was the moment she encountered you that I witnessed her joy return for the first time. She shared with me your story, how you brought her a sense of security. It seems she persuaded herself that by keeping the baby hidden, she could cling to that fleeting joy. David felt a sharp pain in his chest. He grasped the essence of fear. He grasped the desire to break free from the past. But did that make it right to deceive him? She ought to have had faith in me, he murmured softly. Her mother responded softly, understanding that she was aware. She feels a deep sense of regret that goes beyond what you might think. However, it's important to recognize that she is a devoted mother. Her affection for that child surpasses all else in existence. And I am certain she loves you as well. David leaned in, his elbows propped on his knees. He confessed that he wasn't sure if he could overcome this. I'm uncertain about my ability to forgive her. Emily's mother offered a wistful smile. The choice is entirely yours to make. Yet, do not allow your suffering to obscure the truth that exists around you. If you choose to leave now, ensure it's for the genuine reason that you cannot envision a future with her, rather than being driven by anger or pride. David stepped out of the house, burdened by a weighty sorrow. He had arrived in search of understanding, yet what he discovered was only deeper perplexity. He found himself at a crossroads, uncertain of what direction to take next. He was certain of one thing: his heart remained with Emily. Yet, could love by itself truly mend what had been shattered? Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David lingered in his car outside Emily's mother's house, his hands tightly clutching the steering wheel, his gaze fixed vacantly on the dashboard. The dialogue lingered in his mind, an unshakable burden that clung to him. He arrived in this place seeking clarity, yet he found himself ensnared in a conflict of two worlds. One where he departed, prioritizing his pride over his emotions, and another where he remained, embracing the truth and discovering a path to progress. Both choices seemed complicated. His feelings had been chaotic ever since he laid eyes on Emily in that hospital room, cradling a baby he never knew was part of his life. The revelation of the child's existence was more than just a surprise. It was the moment he understood that the woman he had cherished had concealed something so vital from him. His thoughts unfolded countless scenarios, exploring every possible motive behind her actions. Yet none could diminish the sting of betrayal he felt. He ignited the engine and meandered through the streets of Brooklyn, the city lights merging into a haze as his mind raced with untamed ideas. He reminisced about the instant their paths had crossed, a serendipitous meeting at a charity event in Manhattan. She stood by a table filled with silent auction treasures, her gaze fixed on a painting that captivated her with its subtle allure. David felt an undeniable attraction to her, captivated not only by her beauty but also by her demeanor. Confident yet gentle, guarded yet warm. Their dialogue that evening flowed seamlessly, brimming with joy and common passions. He was utterly enthralled. He could never have foreseen that 2 years down the line, he would find himself in this very moment, grappling with doubts about everything he believed he understood about her. The buzz of his phone interrupted his train of thought. A message arrived from Daniel, his closest companion since their college days. "Hey, where have you been? Where have you been hiding? How about we go out for a drink?" David paused, contemplating his response. He found himself uncertain about his desire to engage in conversation, yet he craved a diversion all the same. He replied, "Let's rendezvous at the Whiskey Ward." 30 minutes later, he entered the softly illuminated bar on Essex Street and noticed Daniel in a corner booth, already enjoying a whiskey. "There he is," Daniel remarked as David settled into the seat opposite him. "You appear quite unwell." David emitted a humorless chuckle. I appreciate the kind words. Daniel lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. Are you going to share what's happening? Or should I try to figure it out myself? David let out a breath, his fingers combing through his hair. My name is Emily. She withheld something significant from me, dude. Daniel inclined his body, eager to engage. How massive. David took a deep breath. She is a new mother. A child of 1 year. I was completely unaware. Daniel stared in disbelief. Excuse me, what did you just say? She has a child? So, she never mentioned it to you? David nodded, his jaw clenched in determination. Indeed, I stumbled upon the truth unexpectedly when I spotted her at the hospital. She ultimately confessed to it all. Daniel emitted a soft whistle. Wow, that sounds challenging. David lifted his glass and took a sip, the sting of the whiskey barely soothing the chaos within him. I'm feeling uncertain about my next steps. My affection for her knows no bounds. I truly do. But how can I place my trust in someone who has hidden something like this from me? Daniel let out a deep sigh as he savored a lengthy sip of his drink. I understand where you're coming from. That's quite significant. It's completely understandable for you to feel that way. However, allow me to pose this question to you. Do you believe she intended to cause you pain? David gave a slight shake of his head. Absolutely not. It seems she was filled with fear, perhaps feeling a sense of shame. She expressed that she was afraid of losing me. Daniel gave a slight nod. Ultimately, the pressing inquiry is whether you can find it in your heart to forgive her. Do you envision a future with her, given this knowledge? David gazed into his drink, his mind a tempest of reflections. He had the desire to, yet was it truly possible for him? In the days that followed, he maintained a careful distance from Emily, grappling with his swirling emotions. He dedicated his hours to the office, immersing himself in discussions and negotiations, seeking any distraction to engage his thoughts. Yet it proved to be futile. Each time he shut his eyes, her image flooded his mind, the anguish reflected in her gaze, the urgency in her voice as she confessed her love for him. He found himself ensnared by her presence, unable to break free no matter his efforts. At last, one evening, he reached a conclusion. He arrived at Emily's apartment in Queens, his heart racing as he paused outside her door. As she unveiled it, her eyes grew wide with astonishment, and for a fleeting moment, silence enveloped them both. She moved aside, a quiet invitation for him to enter. Silence enveloped the apartment. David surveyed the room, noticing the baby toys arranged with care in one corner and a quaint crib nestled in the living room. His chest constricted. This was a glimpse into a chapter of Emily's life that had always remained hidden from him. She crossed her arms, a hint of uncertainty in her expression. I had my doubts about whether you would ever arrive. David inhaled deeply. I wasn't either. She bit her lip, her gaze probing his. Are you here to bid farewell? He gave a slight shake of his head. I'm not certain at this point. Her expression shattered, and she turned her gaze elsewhere. David, I understand that I've caused you pain. I understand that I may not be worthy of your forgiveness. But I promise I never intended to deceive you. I was simply fearful. He moved in closer, his voice now a gentle whisper. What is there to fear? She paused, then raised her gaze to him, her eyes brimming with tears. Worried that if you discovered the truth, you might not desire me anymore. That you would perceive me in a new light. That I would lose the one individual who ever made me believe in the possibility of a genuine future. David let out a breath. He had been so absorbed in his own emotions, his own suffering, that he hadn't truly taken her feelings into account. Emily, I'm uncertain if we can return to how things used to be. Yet, I am aware that my feelings for you remain strong. I want to avoid making a choice that I'll look back on with regret. She inhaled unsteadily. In that case, refrain from doing so. Feel free to proceed at your own pace. I shall remain patient. David observed her, the woman he had come to love, the one who harbored a painful secret yet had endured hardships he had not completely grasped. Perhaps there is a chance to restore trust. Perhaps love was a battle worth engaging in. At this moment, he found himself uncertain about their ultimate destination. Yet, he was certain of one thing. He wasn't prepared to turn his back just yet. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, like our content, and share it with your friends. David had always thought that love should be uncomplicated. Two individuals selecting one another, crafting a shared existence, and confronting the world side by side. Yet, as he stood in Emily's apartment, enveloped by the unmistakable traces of a life she had concealed from him, he came to understand that love was far from straightforward. It was chaotic, laden with errors, remorse, and occasionally shrouded in mysteries. The most challenging aspect wasn't the act of falling in love. It was the decision to remain committed even when the very ground beneath us had been unsettled. He cast a fleeting look at the small crib nestled in the corner, the baby clothes meticulously folded on the sofa, and the framed photographs adorning the shelf, capturing Emily and the baby in joyful smiles. Blissfully unaware that this moment was destined to arrive, his heart tightened. This was more than merely her secret. This was her existence. He needed to determine if he could embrace the entirety of it, not merely the aspects that had previously come easily to him. Emily faced him, her hands gripped tightly, her breath coming in uneven bursts, as if she feared that her words might drive him away. The silence lingered between them, thick and unarticulated, until at last she murmured, "I never wanted it to be like this." Her voice quivered, yet there was a sincerity in it that caused David's determination to waver just slightly. He let out a deep breath, running his fingers through his hair. "I'm at a loss, Emily," he confessed. "I believed I understood you. I believed we shared something genuine. And now, I find myself questioning everything." Her eyes brimmed with tears, yet she held her gaze steady. "You're familiar with me, David. I remain unchanged. She paused, breathing unsteadily before carrying on. "I just made a dreadful decision. Fear gripped me. I persuaded myself that withholding this from you was the best course of action. However, it was not the case, and I loathe myself for it." David felt a surge of frustration brewing within him. He felt the urge to let his pride dictate his actions, to reinforce the belief that trust was paramount, and she had broken his completely. Yet, a different aspect of him, the one that continued to hold affection for her in spite of the treachery, found it impossible to overlook the anguish in her tone. She was providing valid reasons. She felt shattered by this as well. He exhaled deeply, finally locking eyes with her. "Who is that individual?" The inquiry slipped out before he had a chance to halt it. He had hesitated to inquire, not at this moment, yet the thought had been eating away at him ever since he laid eyes on the child. If the child wasn't his, then who had captured her heart prior to him? Emily's complexion drained of color, and for a brief moment, she appeared as though she might crumble beneath the burden of the inquiry. "His name was Ryan," she murmured softly. "We were in a relationship prior to my meeting you. It didn't feel serious, at least not from my perspective. However, I soon discovered that I was expecting. Before I had the chance to share my thoughts, he tragically lost his life in a car accident." Her voice faltered at the final words, and she took a deep breath, struggling to contain the feelings that were on the verge of overflowing. David sensed a change stirring within him. He had anticipated a myriad of possibilities, yet this was not one of them. He had envisioned treachery, deceit, but not this: heartbreak, sorrow, calamity. Emily, he was at a loss for words. What might he express? He was so consumed by his own suffering that he failed to acknowledge hers. She hastily brushed away her tears. "I kept it to myself because I didn't want you to feel confined. I hoped for us to focus on our present, not my history. Yet, as time went on, it grew increasingly difficult to express it to you. And then one day I simply told myself it was of no consequence." David breathed out gently, his feelings intertwined in complexities he couldn't quite decipher. He found himself questioning whether this improved the situation or complicated it further. He found himself questioning whether it truly made a difference. "Do you wish for my presence in his life?" he inquired, the words astonishing even to him. Emily's eyes grew large with surprise. David, she paused. I wouldn't anticipate that from you. Yet, do you truly desire it? He insisted. She inclined her head with deliberation. Absolutely, but only if you're on board. I hope you don't feel any pressure to do so. He is my responsibility, not yours. David gazed at her, truly gazed at her. The woman with whom he had fallen in love. The woman who had erred, yet now stood before him, exposed and fragile, seeking his compassion. He was uncertain whether he could fully absolve her. He was uncertain whether trust could be restored in a single night. Yet, he understood that love transcended the notion of perfection. It was about persevering through the challenging moments. And for the first time since that night in the hospital, he understood he wasn't prepared to say goodbye to her. He moved in closer, his voice becoming softer. I don't possess all the solutions, Emily, and I remain in pain. However, if there's even a possibility that we can unravel this mystery, I wish to give it a go. A solitary tear traced its path down her cheek as she released a soft, trembling breath. I desire that as well. David extended his hand, pausing briefly before softly grasping hers. It was not a commitment. The solution had its flaws. Yet it held significance. For the time being, that sufficed. Before moving on to the next section, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David had always viewed himself as a rational individual. His success was crafted through logical choices, meticulous planning, and a keen understanding of human nature. Yet, nothing in his existence had equipped him for the tumultuous emotions that surged upon discovering the woman he cherished had concealed such a life-changing truth. In the days that followed their conversation, he found himself ensnared in a whirlwind of uncertainty, irritation, and an irresistible attraction to Emily. He yearned to embrace his anger, clinging to the sting of betrayal. Yet, each time he gazed at her, each time he noticed the profound regret reflected in her eyes, his determination began to falter. He had always held the conviction that trust formed the bedrock of a relationship, and she had completely shattered that belief. However, what he had not come to understand until this moment was that true love extended beyond mere trust. It was a journey of comprehension, of recognizing another's imperfections and choosing to champion them regardless. One evening, while seated in solitude within his penthouse overlooking downtown Chicago, he found himself fixated on his phone. He had overlooked many of Emily's messages, uncertain of how to reply, fearing that a response might unravel the fragile grip he maintained on his feelings. Yet this evening, an unusual sensation lingered in the air. He had moved beyond mere anger. Fatigue had set in. Weary of cycling through the same reflections, weary of the sensation that he was fleeing from an uncertainty he couldn't quite define. Without allowing himself a moment to second-guess, he quickly composed a message. May I have a moment to see him? He gazed intently at the screen, his heart racing as he anticipated a reply. He was uncertain about what he anticipated. Yet in mere moments, his phone vibrated. Absolutely. Take your time. I'm here when you are prepared. David acted without hesitation. With keys in hand, he navigated the city streets, his grip on the steering wheel tightening instinctively. As he arrived at Emily's apartment, he paused briefly, contemplating before he finally knocked on the door. The door swung open with remarkable speed, revealing Emily, who appeared as though she had been suspended in anticipation since the instant he sent the message. Without a word, she simply moved aside, granting him passage. The living room exuded a serene stillness, softly illuminated by the gentle glow of a small lamp nestled in the corner. In the center of the room, a small bassinet rested quietly. David felt a tightness in his chest. He had envisioned this moment countless times, yet nothing could have equipped him for the truth of it. With a tender touch, Emily approached the bassinet, carefully cradling the slumbering infant in her embrace. She pivoted to confront him, her demeanor enigmatic. His name is Noah, she whispered gently. I had intended to share this with you earlier, but fear gripped me. She approached with deliberate caution. Do you want to take him in your arms? David paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. The thought of cradling a baby, one that wasn't his own yet intertwined with his existence, was profoundly intense. Yet, as he gazed upon Noah's delicate features, serene in slumber, a profound change stirred within him. He extended his hands, a hint of tremor evident as Emily softly laid the baby into his embrace. As Noah nestled beside him, David experienced an unforeseen sensation: warmth, the delicate weight of him, the gentle rhythm of his breaths, the way his tiny fingers fluttered in slumber. It was a sensation unlike any he had ever known. He gazed at Emily, his voice barely above a whisper. "He resembles you." Emily released a soft, anxious chuckle. "He possesses my eyes, yet he carries Ryan's nose." Her voice carried a weight of sorrow when she uttered the name, a sorrow that David had not truly recognized until that moment. Ryan was more than just an ex. He was a figure from Emily's past, a presence whose departure had indelibly shaped her existence. David felt uncertain about how to measure up, but as he gazed down at Noah, it dawned on him that he didn't need to. This was not a matter of rivalry. It revolved around decisions. For the first time since the hospital, he experienced a sense of victory. He had the option to turn his back, to act as if this situation held no weight for him, to craft a life unburdened by complexities. Or he could remain, seek to comprehend, endeavor to create something fresh with Emily and Noah. It certainly wouldn't be a walk in the park. There would be instances of uncertainty, obstacles he had yet to anticipate. As he gazed at Emily, truly taking her in, he realized one undeniable truth. He wasn't prepared to say goodbye. "I'm uncertain about our next steps," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "However, I believe I am eager to discover." A tear glided down Emily's cheek, yet this time, it wasn't born from sorrow. "That's everything I require, David." He looked down at Noah, his small chest rising and falling, blissfully oblivious to the whirlwind of feelings enveloping him. David understood that this was merely the start of something greater. Yet, after weeks of uncertainty, he found himself experiencing an unexpected sensation: hope. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David had never thought of himself as the type of man who would cradle a baby in his arms, experiencing a peculiar yet undeniable feeling of belonging. Yet here he stood, in Emily's living room, softly swaying Noah, feeling the delicate grip of his tiny fingers on the fabric of his shirt as he drifted off to sleep. The child felt almost weightless in his arms. Yet there was a profound significance to this moment that David had never encountered before. His thoughts swirled with a tempest of feelings: doubt, bewilderment, and an undeniable warmth that he found impossible to dismiss. He had dedicated countless years to constructing barriers, making sure that feelings never interfered with reason. Yet Noah, in his subtle and unaware manner, was dismantling each one of them. Emily lingered at a distance, observing them quietly. David noticed the unease reflected in her gaze, the way she seemed to pause, holding her breath as though fearful of breaking the spell of the moment. She had always exuded strength and independence, yet in this moment, a sense of vulnerability enveloped her. "I realize this may be overwhelming," she said at last, her tone gentle. "I was surprised that you agreed to this so quickly. I only wanted you to see him, to grasp that my intentions were never to conceal anything from you to cause you pain." I felt a wave of fear wash over me. David let out a soft sigh, adjusting Noah gently in his embrace. "This is difficult for me to understand, Emily. A couple of weeks back, I believed I had my future all mapped out. Everything feels transformed now." He hesitated, selecting his phrases with precision. "Yet, I find myself reluctant to turn away." Emily's shoulders eased a bit, a glimmer of relief passing over her features. "That signifies more than you realize." They lingered in that moment, the quiet surrounding them transformed from a weighty tension to an unarticulated understanding, a connection that spanned the distance between their shared history and the unknown possibilities ahead. David let out a long breath, gently setting Noah back in his bassinet. The infant shifted gently, yet remained in slumber, his delicate features exuding tranquility. Observing him, David experienced a sharp sensation of an unnamed emotion. He had devoted years to pursuing success, believing that riches and security would bring him a sense of fulfillment. In this cozy apartment, with Emily observing him and Noah resting just a breath away, he came to understand the depth of his previous misconceptions. He glanced at Emily, raking his fingers through his hair. I'm uncertain about what this signifies for our future. I'm uncertain about my readiness to take on the role of a father figure, and I question if I ever will be. However, I am aware that I cannot ignore the reality of this situation. Emily gave a slow nod. That will suffice for the moment. The subsequent days passed in a haze. David discovered himself slipping into a fresh routine, one that seemed unfamiliar yet oddly instinctive. He continued with his meetings and managed his business, yet his thoughts frequently wandered to Emily and Noah. He discovered that he was reaching out to her more often, inquiring about Noah's day and checking in on her feelings. He couldn't pinpoint the moment it occurred, but one evening, after a grueling day at work, he found himself driving to Emily's apartment, almost instinctively. As she opened the door, her expression revealed a mix of surprise and a hint of pleasure at his arrival. Is that you, David? He paused briefly before crossing the threshold. I merely wished to catch a glimpse of him. A subtle smile graced Emily's lips as she moved aside, inviting him in. He has just awakened. You arrived just when it mattered most. David sat on the couch, cradling Noah once more, captivated by the baby's wide eyes blinking up at him. After years of navigating billion-dollar negotiations and reaching the pinnacle of the corporate world, he found himself unexpectedly disarmed by this small figure before him. He glanced at Emily, who observed him with an expression that eluded his understanding. What inspired you to accomplish this independently? He inquired, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily let out a soft sigh as she settled down next to him. It was quite a challenge. There were nights when tears soaked my pillow, days when I doubted my own strength. Yet I found myself with no other option. I had to persist. She halted, her eyes fixing intently on his. I never anticipated your involvement in this, David. I believed I had lost you forever. David glanced down at Noah, who was flailing his tiny hands in the air, as if trying to grasp something invisible. I'm not quite sure of my path, he confessed. However, I am eager to give it a shot. Emily released a trembling breath, giving a nod. That's everything I needed to know. As the night unfolded, David discovered a sense of ease in this environment that surpassed the comfort of his own home. He assisted Emily in lulling Noah to sleep, attuned to her gentle whispers of a lullaby, her voice a tender balm in the quiet night. He observed her tenderly lay him in his crib, each gesture imbued with affection. In that moment, it struck him profoundly, the weight of his sacrifices and the solitude of his endurance. For the first time, he felt a pang of regret for not having arrived earlier. As he rose to depart, Emily accompanied him to the door, pausing momentarily before finding her words. Thank you, David, for your presence, for not excluding me entirely. He nodded, his fingers brushing against the doorknob as if savoring the moment. I don't possess all the solutions, Emily. However, I believe I would like to explore them alongside you. Her smile was genuine, filled with hope. That's everything I require. As David emerged into the brisk Chicago air, a transformation stirred within him. After years of pursuing success and constructing an empire, he finally came to the profound realization that perhaps, just perhaps, love was the one element he had overlooked all this time. Before moving on, please subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. David had always been a man of conviction, but as he sat in his penthouse in downtown Chicago, gazing at his reflection in the window, he found himself in a whirlwind of doubt. The city lights twinkled beneath, the skyline reaching far and wide, a testament to the life he had crafted, filled with authority, impact, and unmistakable achievement. For the first time in years, he sensed that he had been sprinting on a treadmill, making no progress, pursuing a mirage of satisfaction that had perpetually eluded him. The recent weeks had plunged him into uncharted waters, a realm where feelings held greater weight than reason, where affection and duty bore a burden more substantial than any transaction he had ever finalized. He found himself immersed in moments with Emily and Noah, far beyond what he had ever envisioned, and with each day that unfolded, the barriers he had constructed around his heart started to dissolve. Noah had transformed him in ways he never anticipated. It wasn't merely the way the infant gazed up at him with wide, trusting eyes or how he clutched his fingers firmly when he cradled him. The moment struck me that this little life symbolized a greater purpose, an opportunity to engage in something truly meaningful. He had never viewed himself as the nurturing sort, yet somehow, each time he found himself in Noah's presence, the notion felt less far-fetched than it once did. And then came Emily, the woman he had once cherished, the woman he had believed was gone from his life for good. Observing her in her role as a mother only intensified his respect for her. She had faced countless trials in solitude, yet not once did she voice her grievances, nor did she cast blame upon him. Rather, she had effortlessly taken the necessary steps, nurturing their son with resilience and elegance. That evening, as he found himself in solitude, he realized he had come to a pivotal moment. He might carry on with the charade that this was only a fleeting phase, that he was merely soothing his own conscience by being involved in Noah's life. Or he could face his greatest fear, to commit, not only to Noah but to Emily, to the vision of a future shaped not by boardrooms and business meetings, but by love, responsibility, and family. For years, he held the conviction that emotions rendered a man vulnerable, that love was merely a diversion. Yet, he was starting to understand that the deepest power arose from accepting what was genuinely significant. The following morning, David discovered himself standing outside Emily's apartment sooner than he typically would. Just as his knuckles brushed against the door, it swung open, revealing her astonished face. "Is that you, David?" she inquired, rubbing her eyes with a hint of drowsiness. "What brings you here at such an early hour?" He paused briefly before crossing the threshold. "I had to lay my eyes on you. And Noah." She cast him a questioning glance but chose not to inquire further, gesturing for him to enter. Noah had risen early, perched in his crib, chattering away to himself. Upon spotting David, his small face brightened with a grin, and instinctively, David bent down and lifted him into his arms. The infant cooed, nestling his head against David's chest, and a warmth blossomed within him, deepening his tenderness. Emily observed them, her face a mask of mystery. "You've been visiting quite frequently," she finally remarked, her tone soft and soothing. David nodded, cradling Noah in his arms. "I understand." He lifted his eyes, locking onto her gaze. "I refuse to escape from this any longer. I may not have all the answers when it comes to being a father, Emily, but I am eager to discover and grow in this role. I want to be more than just a fleeting presence in Noah's life. I wish to support him, to support you." Emily's eyes grew wide, a flicker of surprise crossing her features at his unexpected words. She released a slow breath, crossing her arms tightly. "David, is that really the case? This transcends mere feelings of guilt or obligation." "Absolutely not," he asserted with conviction. "It revolves around affection." The atmosphere grew still, the gravity of his statement lingering in the air. Emily took a deep breath, fighting to hold back her tears. "I'm at a loss for words." He moved nearer, still cradling Noah, his other hand extending toward hers. "Allow me the chance to give it a go. We can work through this together." A tear rolled down her cheek, yet she smiled and nodded. "Understood." David experienced a profound sense of relief, as if, after years of searching, he had finally arrived at the place he was destined to be. After dedicating so much time to constructing a realm centered on wealth and influence, he now found himself, alongside Emily and Noah, understanding that genuine richness transcended mere figures in a financial ledger. It revolved around affection, centered on those who brought meaning to existence. For the first time, he was prepared to welcome it. Before moving on to the next segment, kindly subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends. David had never envisioned the extent to which his life could transform in merely a few months. He transitioned from a life dominated by business transactions and corporate achievements to one where he found himself quietly checking on a sleeping baby in the stillness of the night, preparing bottles and mastering the art of diaper changes. It was a realm he had never imagined for himself. Yet each day he discovered himself sinking further into it, becoming increasingly fond of the life he was crafting with Emily and Noah. There were still moments of uncertainty, instances when he pondered if he was genuinely equipped to embrace the role of a father. Yet, whenever he caught sight of Noah's small fingers entwining with his or listened to the joyful sounds of his laughter echoing through the apartment, those uncertainties vanished. Each time Emily gazed at him with a glimmer of hope instead of doubt, he became increasingly convinced that he was precisely where he was destined to be. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow in Emily's cozy living room, David felt a stirring within him, a realization that the moment had come to embrace the next chapter. They found themselves in an unusual limbo, deepening their connection, yet never confronting the reality of what lay ahead. Emily had come to terms with his presence in their lives, yet she had never taken it for granted or expected anything more. She exercised caution, and David grasped the reason behind it. She had crafted a life independent of him, and her caution towards his promises was entirely justified. Yet he desired to alter that. He aimed to reveal to her that he was Emily, he stated, placing his glass of water on the table. She glanced up from her playtime with Noah, her face reflecting a sense of curiosity. "What is it?" she inquired, picking up on the gravity in his tone. David inhaled deeply, his hands quivering ever so slightly. "I love you," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "From the moment our paths crossed, my affection for you has only grown stronger and never wavered. I was simply too scared to acknowledge it at that time. My admiration for you has only deepened with all that you've accomplished, for the incredible mother you are to Noah, and for the unwavering strength you've displayed through it all. I refuse to waste another day acting as if this is just a phase. I desire for us to embrace the essence of family in its fullest form." Emily's eyes grew wide, and for a brief moment, she fell into silence. David's heart raced within him, anticipation building as he awaited her reply. At last, she let out a breath, her head shaking gently as a tender smile graced her lips. "David, are you truly sincere in what you just said? Because if you express this, I need to be certain that you are fully committed. Noah is entitled to a sense of security. I am entitled to a sense of stability." Without a moment's pause, he affirmed his understanding. "That's the reason I'm proposing to you." Emily inhaled sharply, her hand instinctively rising to her mouth. Tears gathered in her eyes, and for a fleeting instant, David felt a pang of concern that he had moved too quickly. But then she nodded, a tear cascading down her cheek. "Indeed," she murmured. "Absolutely, I will marry you." He felt a wave of relief and joy as he enveloped her in his embrace, holding her close. Noah chuckled softly, his hands coming together in delight as if he grasped the unfolding scene. David pressed his lips gently to Emily's forehead, savoring the moment, allowing it to envelop him completely. In the coming months, they envisioned a charming yet elegant wedding in Chicago. It transcended extravagance or luxury. It was a celebration of love, marking the moment when the three of them officially united as a family. The wedding day radiated warmth, laughter, and vows that David understood he would cherish for a lifetime. As he stood at the altar, his gaze fixed on Emily approaching with Noah cradled in her arms, a profound sense of certainty washed over him. He had made the right choice. That evening, as they settled into their new abode, a place they had selected together, David embraced his wife and son tightly, filled with a profound sense of thankfulness. For countless years, he held the conviction that true happiness was derived from success, from the accumulation of wealth and the attainment of power. As he gazed into the eyes of those who held his heart, he understood that genuine success transcended mere wealth. It revolved around affection, capturing the instances that rendered existence significant. He made a promise to hold each of them dear,